Okay, we're going to get into some roughing cuts for basically the rough shaping of your bowl here, using gouges this time. First gouge I'm going to use, this is one of the swept back wing gouges. So it has a longer sweep here, gives you a little bit more steel you can put into the wood. Mostly I'm going to have it rotated about 90 degrees. This is a scraping cut, or at least as far as I'm concerned. Some people may differ with me on that. Turn it on at about 90 degrees, and I'll be pulling. I generally like to work from the center out to the rim, smooth it up. Then once it's fairly flat, I'll start nibbling off the corner. A little more speed there. Mostly I'm just pivoting with my body on this one. Not doing any motion with my arms here. This all comes from moving my body. Okay, so again, a scraping, roughing type cut with a gouge, one of the swept back grinds. It's got a long flute there. Over on its side, and I'm going to push this time because otherwise I'm in the way of the camera. I need a little more speed there. You can drop the handle if you want. That makes it a little bit more slicing, more shear, I guess. Basically for removing lots of stock in a hurry. Okay, so that was a roughing cut with a swept back grind right here, so that's got a nice long cutting edge on it. I'm going to do the next one. This is more of a traditional or fingernail grind, a lot shorter edge on it. Biggest difference is how much you want to pull off at one time and whether or not your lathe has horses to move it. So roll this one over, flutes at about 90 degrees, and I'm going to be pushing. This can be done push or pull. This is all about shaping, all about getting everything that isn't a bowl out of the way. This is not a bevel rubbing cut. It is a scrape. It will leave you a decent surface, but not as good as you get with a bevel rubbing cut. Okay, the bowl has been reversed. We're ready to turn out the inside. First step, I'm going to even up this face all the way across. Then I'll round over this rim. Always round over that rim because it will slice you if you don't. And then I'll start removing the inside. So this is a scraping cut. I'm going to have the flutes rolled all the way over on their side to pull off the stock that way. Round over the rim, and now start going across the middle. Now again, we talk about rub the bevel, rub the bevel. There, it's just starting to cut. Keep that same angle, come back out to the edge of the rim, start a cut across. I'm going to turn the speed up a little bit, rub the bevel, starting to cut, and push. Now again, you'll notice I have the flutes rolled over on their sides. This is keeping it balanced so it doesn't want to roll and tip on you. Working like this, cutting with this part of the gouge down here. This part actually is doing kind of a shear cut, and this is doing more of a scrape. If I run with it like this, going down the inside, this side is high. It's going to be unbalanced, and it's going to want to grab and catch. And that's a cut that I'm sure we've all made, and I will show that here. Again, slow the lathe down to, I don't know, 30, 40 RPM. If I'm trying to ride this wing as I go down, it gets in there, it will grab and roll over. Big nasty catch, lots of noise, bowl blows up. A few more cuts down here. So you notice this tower I've got in the center? It's a lot easier to remove with a scraper, and generally I'll leave that in. Turn the top part first. This bowl's maybe 3 inches deep. I go down about an inch and a half to finish thickness. If I go more than that, this will start moving. It's going to be eccentric and it'll be hard to keep a tool on, so come back to the top. Take a little more off before I do a finish cut. Flutes are rolled away from the cut. Okay, now, this is a tricky cut here. I'm sure you've all done this cut where you come in and it catches the edge and skates off like that. Again, that is where the cutting edge is hitting the wood before the bevel has a chance to rub, and you're going, well, how do I get it bevel to rub when there's nothing for it to rub on? ABC, anchor. Tool on the tool rest. Rub the bevel on the inside till it just starts to cut. Bring it back to the top, keep that angle, and start your cut very gently. Use your finger on the back side to support it. So rub, rub. There it's cutting. Come back to the top, keep that same angle. Gently start it. Turn that off, feel how thick this is. That feels pretty good. Time to remove some of this. A scraping cut works best, so I'm going to take the flutes. I'm not going to push them across this way, I'm going to roll it this way. So I'm scraping with this lower edge here. Leave my little tower on the inside there. I am going to check the walls for thickness using a caliper. I'll thank Mr. Dave Ellsworth for this one. This fits right into my price budget range. A little piece of wire, it's bent, kind of a D shape. These ends need to be at about 90 degrees to each other. This is infinitely variable for whatever size bowl you want. Barely touch the inside or the outside. And you want an 1/8 of an inch or so gap in between them, and I just slide it down lightly. That tells you how thick or thin you are. Price on that's about 10 cents. I bought a whole big roll of it, and everybody in our club has a bunch of these. So I'm good wall thickness down to there. Time to remove some more of the bulk. Flutes rolled away from the cut. Now to remove this center part again, in a scraping cut, roll it over, push it down. Now I want you to remember what I'm doing here, because I'll show more about this when I get to the center. But if I push on this, it breaks. And if you look at that, you've probably all seen that in the bottom of one of your bowls when you're doing it. And that's mostly because you're trying to push the tool faster than it will cut. So we'll get down a little bit further. Take another finish cut or two here. I'm hanging out a little far there. We all tend to do that from time to time just to see how far we can do it and get away with it. Notice too here that I have the tool rest extended past the center. There's a very good reason for that. Mostly because if I go here and I push past, I don't want to drop down into the spinning wood. So, turn on again. Now if you notice what's going on up here on top, my tool rest is getting in the way. Mostly that's a bevel angle on this gouge, which is about 50 degrees. I can get a different tool rest and probably complete that, or I can actually get another tool which has a little bit better bevel angle. Boy, say that 3 times fast. And make the same cut, finish it. So, get the other tool. Again, this is the fluteless gouge. So if you notice, it's not cutting until I bring the handle clear out here. Oh. I just love those little flowers. So that's a fairly good inside. I'm going to check my wall thickness again. So a little bit of gap down to there, starts getting a little bit thicker. And now I'm going to check my bowl depth, see how deep I am, how much wood I have between the jaws, between here and the jaws of the chuck. So I'll explain this a little bit in more depth later on, but this is how I tell how deep they are. That reads 8 5/8. I put my cheater stick on here. Call it a cheater stick so I don't have to do the arithmetic in my head. Sight across here, and that says I'm right at about 3/8 of an inch depth, which is just about perfect. I may take a little bit off the center. I got a little bitty bump in there. The rest of it's pretty clean. So back to the top here. Rub my bevel and then a very gentle push this on that last part right there. Oh, start cutting. There we go. Now when you're nearing the very center of the bowl, if you haven't figured this one out yet, spinning at the same number of RPMs, but this one you've got about 7-8 inch diameter, and down there you're down to almost nothing, and it's moving so slow that it's, is it actually moving or not? And if you push hard, that's going to tear and leave that ugly surface on the end. And also if you push hard, you can run past the center, and then your tool engages on the other side, catches, comes back down and slams in real hard. That can cause all sorts of nasty problems. So as you get near that center, you want to use very, very gentle pressure. So again, back up a little more speed here. One more finish cut. And this last cut is a real touchy-feely thing. If you pay attention, you can actually feel when it's starting to tear rather than cut. And if you push too hard, it's going to tear out. It's going to actually break off before it cuts, just like when I was removing that tower. That's pretty much finished bowl on the inside. Oh, there's my gouge mark for when I showed you what happens if it gets too high, so I come make another pass on that. Again, this is not a roughing tool. there's the finished surface. So this is kind of a shot of that flower that came off from the inside there. So one advantage to this tool, that nice high shear angle, very steep shear angle, very gentle cut, lifts it off there very easily. I'm going to show you one more tool. This is the bottom of the bowl gouge. That's about a 75-degree angle, secondary bevel on it. This is another good one for going through the transition and across the bottom. So and I get shavings off there. I'll never get that little flower with this particular tool.